Hello, hello, good people. My name is Dr. Tameka Ellington. I'm an associate professor of fashion, and I'm currently serving as the interim assistant dean for the College of the Arts. It is my pleasure to be here with you today to share a bit of knowledge, a bit of inspiration, a bit of empowerment about Juneteenth celebration this year. Before I begin, I would like to say a hearty thank you to the Encore Chamber Music Institute for the invitation to share this message with you. And if you would allow me to go ahead and begin to share my screen so that we can get started with this message. And so today's message is all about a celebration of fire for freedom. Just as all African-American history started with slavery, Juneteenth is no exception. The Atlantic slave trade began in the 15th century with the Portuguese, then the British, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the Danish, all bringing big ships over to the West African areas and other parts of Africa to capture people that were from Nigeria, people that were from Ghana, people that were from the Congo, and various areas in the West African regions. These individuals were captured. These individuals were put onto these holding cells. I got a chance to go to Ghana a few years ago, and I actually saw what they call the slave dungeons. And the individuals that were captured, they were put in these slave dungeons until the ships arrived. And when the ships arrived, the people were then stacked and shacked. So they were shackled at the feet, they were shackled at the neck, they were stacked on top of each other like sardines. And this image that you see here is just a digital image of what that storage area would have looked like on those slave ships. From the very beginning, Africans were fighting for their freedom. From the very beginning, people were committing suicide by jumping off the side of a bridge or doing other things to prevent themselves from going, such as not eating and other things of rebellion that they tried before they were being put onto these ships. And as individuals were going on these ships, the people were, again, fighting for their freedom. They were trying various different things to rebel against their captives. They were fighting back in various different ways, physically and mentally. They were fighting back. It's always been a fight ever since the very beginning. In 1807, federal law prohibited the importing of captives from Africa. And so this image that you see here is an illustration of the Amistad in 1839. This was several years after the federal law was put into place that told these slave traders that they were no longer allowed, they were prohibited from going over to Africa to retrieve new people that they could bring into this new market, trade and to sell once they got to the various locations in the Caribbean and in the Americas. The slave trade was still going on illegally. The Amistad is an amazing example of people fighting back for their freedom, people wanting their freedom from the very beginning. The Amistad ship is an example of illegal trading, and the illegal trading went on for a number of decades. Families were torn apart once they arrived at their new lands. Families were pulled apart. Fathers sent various places, mothers being torn from their children's. The effects that this had on the African American community is still very prevalent today. It's been more than 150 years since we've been free, since we've been emancipated. And African Americans still have yet to shake the slave masters' indoctrination. And the families, many Black families are still broken as a result of this particular part of our history. What's amazing about Black people, what's amazing about these enslaved Africans is that even though they were torn apart from their families, they fought against being torn apart. They established families with whatever family members they had left with them. They established family with the other enslaved individuals that were on that same plantation. And so families were formed in the best way that they could. West African nations and societies are very communal, are very cooperative. And the family was organically created through a mixture of blood relatives as well as other enslaved peoples on the plantation. So this image that you see is a family, but all of these individuals may not be blood related. They may be a mixture of people who are blood related along with others on the same plantation. They brought themselves together to be able to help themselves fight through the experiences that they were going through at that particular time. During the Civil War, slavery persisted in the Confederate States. Many slaves ran away during this time because society, overall society, was preoccupied with the war. Again, freedom was always at the forefront of their mind. Wanting to be free, not wanting to be enslaved was always something that Black people wanted. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863, and General Jordan Granger ordered the Texan slaveholders to set their slaves free in 1865. And this was 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And it's unfortunate that yet again, because of a lack of knowledge, because of a lack of information about what was happening in the overall society, the enslaved peoples were kept in a very solid situation on their plantations. And so they had no idea, many of them had no idea that they were set free until General Granger came and made the announcement in Galveston, Texas, that all peoples were to be free. It's said that the Texan slave owners of that time wanted to get an extra harvest out of those individuals, out of their enslaved peoples before they set them free, which is just another example of how freedom was taken from us. Even when it was proclaimed law, it was still taken from us. And that's why we celebrate Juneteenth, is because that is when the Black people were finally set free. That group of individuals in Galveston, Texas, once they were set free, then all of the nation was set free. This particular statue, this beautiful piece of artwork, can be found in Fort Worth, Texas. This was honored piece that was in honor of those individuals who were set free all those years ago on Juneteenth. And Juneteenth was celebrated many years after the emancipation in 1865. But during World War I, the idea of Juneteenth was seen as unpatriotic. And so many individuals did not openly celebrate Juneteenth. They hid the fact that they were celebrating by just celebrating in small pockets, maybe celebrating at their church or maybe celebrating in their family home. It was not considered a national celebration because it was seen as being unpatriotic. Once Africans were set free, the abolishment of slavery in 1865 left many enslaved Africans with a new burden, the critical need for fire. So not only now were they set free, but now they had the new burden of trying to figure out what exactly free meant. And for many people, they had no idea what free meant. Many enslaved individuals, once they were set free, they ended up actually going back to their master because they had no idea what to do. They didn't know where to get employment, and they went back to their masters. It was recommended that they go back to their previous masters and try to negotiate a salary or some wages for the work that they would do on their plantations. And yet, that is how the industry of sharecropping began. Sharecropping started in the United States because those individuals, those freed enslaved peoples, now were again forced to go back to those plantations because they had nowhere else to go. So their burden was far from over. That burden that they were enduring took much, much fire. And so as I describe fire, fire is that, that characteristic, that sense of resilience that Black people have had to create over the years within themselves. And so the F in fire is for fearless. And so when I think about many of the individuals in our history, our ancestors that were fearless, one of the ones that comes to mind is Harriet Tubman, who made more than 19 trips into the South to free more than 300 enslaved individuals. There's not one more fearless than Harriet. The I in fire is integrity. Frederick Douglass was the first Black abolitionist. He was the one who made slavery a national discussion. Because of the fact that he was born enslaved, he had the experience of what it was like to be a slave. He was then set free. Once he was set free, he began to speak on his experiences and what it was like for enslaved peoples on those plantations, so that those individuals could be, things could be made aware. There were already abolitionists that were fighting for freedom of Black people. But once Frederick Douglass stepped onto the scene, he amplified the voices of those abolitionists by giving real life experiences, real life examples of what enslaved peoples were going through, and the authenticity that he had, that integrity that he brought to the message really helped to get the nation talking about what was going on in the slave industry. Revolutionary. And so, you know, as I was putting together this presentation, and I was thinking about which of my ancestors would be considered revolutionary, the very first person that came to mind was Nat Turner. In August 1831, Nat Turner led a revolt and killed over 50 slaveholders. As a result, law was put in place, making it illegal to educate slaves. And the reason why that happened is because those that ended up capturing Nat Turner and then eventually executing him said that the reason why he was able to go about a successful revolt in the way in which he did was because of the fact that he was educated. Nat Turner was a pastor. He read the Bible. He knew how to read and write. And therefore, because of that, that got placed on the remaining slave populations. And so it became illegal to educate slaves for fear that more slaves would try to revolt. Again, this is a perfect example that freedom was always something that was desired. It was never a question whether or not Black people wanted to become free. And E, when I think about E, I think about the excellence that many of our Black ancestors have shown over the years. Madam C.J. Walker is an amazing example of excellence. After the abolishment of slavery, free men and women had limited options for employment until they were shown another way. And Madam C.J. Walker refused to live her life as a sharecropper. She refused to follow the status quo. She refused to be what others thought she should be. And she was one of the first millionaires, female millionaires in our nation. And she was an amazing example of how you can take what you've been given and turn it into something that's of such high excellence that you become an example for Black people around the globe. Her products not only were products that were sold to Black people nationally, but Madam C.J. Walker's products went around the globe, and many Black people around the globe purchased her products and was inspired by her story. And so when I was in the process of developing the talk for this particular event, I talked to Jinju, and she said that Rosa Parks was the muse or was the inspiration for this year's event. And so I definitely wanted to include the fire that Rosa Parks embodies. She most definitely is fearless. She most definitely upholds the utmost integrity. She is a revolutionary in the work that she's been able to do, as well as she exudes excellence in everything that she has done for Black people. Her fearlessness allowed her the wherewithal to be trained with the NAACP, to work with them, to prepare for this very moment. So when she got arrested, it was actually a planned arrest. She was hoping to be able to get arrested so that they could begin to have a reason to start off this new movement called the Civil Rights Movement. And she said over the years, I've learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear, knowing that what must be done does away with fear. And so Rosa Parks, she did away with her fear when she sat on the bus, didn't get up, and helped to become the face of this new movement that helped to give Black people just a portion of their freedom. Miss Rosa Parks was also a person of integrity. She truly believed that each person must live their life as a model for others, which I also believe that as well. And so I admire her for that, wanting to live a life that can be modeled after others, especially for Black people and other minorities. You know, we are in dire need of individuals that we can look up to. We have individuals in our lives that we want to model ourselves after so that we can become the best person that we can. And Rosa Parks, the level of integrity that she had throughout the years of all the service work that she did for Black people is just immeasurable. She was also a very revolutionary individual. And when I think of the word revolutionary, I think of someone who steps outside the box, or someone who steps outside the circle, or someone who says that, you know what, there is no box. There is not a limit to what we can do if we put our minds to it. And so she's also said, people always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. but that isn't true. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. And so many African American people didn't know how to stand up during that time. And Rosa Parks, being a part of the NAACP, a member of that, I believe she was the secretary for the NAACP for many years. And with her participation in the NAACP, she had the means, she had the ability to think as a revolutionary in order to help move Black people beyond the current circumstances that they were in. And all the work that she has done has gotten her much accolades. Rosa Parks has gotten several honors, many, many awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom that was given to her in 1999 by President Bill Clinton. She also received several honors in the form of statues. There are over 100 statues across the nation that is modeled after her. And in Washington, D.C. alone, I believe there may be 2 or 3 statues. This particular one that you see in the PowerPoint slide is actually right at the Capitol, right inside of the White House. You see Rosa Parks there sitting so eloquently as she did to help bring about freedom for her people. She is also, in all the excellence that she has produced throughout her life, she was also able to acquire over 40 honorary doctorate degrees. And this just goes to show that Rosa Parks, not only did she do just that one thing, did she sit on the bus and stay there and refuse to get up, but she also became this amazing activist. All the work that she did was just a way in which to provide a very needed fire for the African American community. Rosa's fire did not stop there. So other activists coming after her were inspired by Rosa's fire. And that includes people such as Reverend Al Sharpton from the National Action Network and Reverend Jesse Jackson from the Rainbow Push Coalition, both of which were highly focused on the improvement of Black people, the freedom of Black people. In particular, Reverend Jesse Jackson was really inspired to push Black people to have a better understanding of their economic systems so that they can be able to grow, because that is one thing, as we all know, in regards to economics, Black people still fall so much farther behind than our white brothers and sisters do. And so the Rainbow Push Coalition was a way to help give the Black community the necessary tools that they needed to be able to push toward a new mark. And today, when I look at these beautiful 3 ladies, these ladies are such an inspiration to me. This past year has been a heavy reckoning that there is still so much work to be done. Racial disparities reared their head with the pandemic and continued killing of Black people by law enforcement. And these 3 women founded the movement of this era, which I am so proud of, because in the past, our movements were started by men. They were, of course, very much so supported by the women and held up by the women. But these are 3 women who took the lead. These are 3 women who stepped out on faith and began a new movement that is helping to continue to fight for the freedom of Black people. We still carry the burden. We are legally free, but there's so many things that still continues to hold Black people back. So many issues that they still have to go through on a day-to-day basis. Various forms of discrimination, including educational discrimination, including economic discrimination, including discrimination. I'm a fashion professor, so when I look at the overall beauty industry, Black people are cut out of that beauty industry because we're not considered beautiful. Black faces are not considered beautiful. So we still carry the burden in so many ways. Because we carry the burden, it's so important that we continue to remain on fire, that we continue to have a fearlessness, that we continue to have a level of integrity. We continue to be revolutionary in our thinking, and we continue to exude excellence in everything that we do so that we can continue to push towards our freedom. Because yes, today we are free, but we are free-ish. We are not totally free. Juneteenth is a celebration for that level of freedom that we have been able to acquire today. But the celebration is just another reminder that Black people still have so much further to go to really be able to embody the idea of what true freedom is all about. I would like to thank you all for joining me today for this presentation. I appreciate you stopping through and spending some time with me today. I wish you all the blessings. Happy Juneteenth.